And let me see if I have a before we get orientated here. Okay, so we're looking at about October 7th. More or less, for the first exam in here. And, yeah, that's right. Just to give you an idea, just a heads up on that one, October 7th, and it's September 9th, so about a month away. And we're going to be covering chapters 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8 in this edition of Olson and Hergenheim. You already know that. Could the previous edition work for you? Possibly, but I'm not going to go. When I refer to tables and graphs and things like that, I'll be referring to them in this edition. If they're in the old edition, great, but I'll just leave it to you to like hunt and peck and go find and whatever. What was your question?
Passages 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8.
Let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8. Let's see. One, 2, 3, 7, and 8. That's right. Any other questions? All right, last time we were talking about some philosophical issues, I think, in science in general and human behavior. And, there's that button over there. And I'm trying to recall, how far did we get? We were talking about metaphysics, I think, probably, weren't we? And just for a quick review, since it's been a couple of weeks. We're talking about metaphysics. That's this area of philosophy that has some sub-areas that kind of fall underneath that heading. And one of them had to do with cosmology. And for our purposes, you remember, it dealt with something called determinism and free will. Determinism and free will. Another thing we talked about had to do with ontology. And for our purposes, the mind-body problem. And the third area that falls underneath this heading would be epistemology. This having to do with the study of the nature and the origin of knowledge. Now, with regard to determinism and free will, where this is important for us is the cosmos orderly and lawful, meaning all events have determinable causes. You need to know that for the test. Determinism. All events have determinable causes, meaning nothing happens by chance. Nothing is willy-nilly out there. There's a cause, furthermore, a determinable cause for everything out there in the cosmos. But that's kind of a tall order, I mean, because, how are we going to ever live long enough or be smart enough to figure out the causes for everything? But maybe I think I told you there's different ways or levels of analysis you can look at, and one of them is really, really tiny aspects of the cosmos, and the other level that you could look at would be on a really huge scale, like the universe. People that are subatomic particle physicists and theoretical physicists, they're working on questions having to do with the cosmos on a really small level. Matter, what's down there? Can we keep breaking things down into smaller and smaller parts? And how does it all work? How does it all fit together? But in a really tiny level. And then when you talk about subatomic particles, a lot of these subatomic particle physicists are interested in how matter operates at that level. And is that completely chaotic down there, those subatomic particles? Are they all just like whizzing around down there and they're totally unpredictable? Or is there even some order to that down there? One thing whizzes around and hits another thing, and or is that chaotic? Is that completely chaotic? Well, that's one question you might ask. Now you're saying to yourself, what's that got to do with people? That's kind of the discussion I think we got into. Is what's that got to do with people? I mean, well, because you're made up of the same stuff that this podium is made up of. You're just arranged differently. Same thing with it. Everything, all matter. We're all made up of the same stuff. We're just put together in a different way. Well, so then you mean, Dr. Winkle, that because we're made up of the same stuff, the same laws and principles apply to everything? Yes. I mean, that's the idea. Except that there's a clear difference at this level of analysis between me and this piece of wood. I have an awareness. This piece of wood, I don't think has an awareness. I don't think so. But anyway, it doesn't respond like it does. But I have an awareness of myself and the cosmos. And I can't think of any other non-living things that have that kind of an awareness. So we're made up of the same stuff, and yet we're different. And then I think religions really jump all over that. Oh, what's really different? Oh, it's free will. That's the thing that's different about us humans. We have free will. What is that? Well, it's that you're the author of your actions, and it's completely unconstrained. And that was given to you by God so that you could make decisions about how you want to behave. And if you choose the right ones, you go to heaven. And if you choose the wrong ones, you go to hell. And that's your decision. And you have that freedom of making that decision. Well, this could lead into all kinds of discussions, which it usually does when you're talking about religion. I mean, how many different religions are there in the world, in the cosmos? I mean, we could spend all day talking about that. And do you have free will or not? But that's where religion is. If you're going to have any free will at all, religion is kind of over here. Science is over here. Science is trying to figure out why things act the way they do, including people. So, free will may be an illusion, really. If there really is an order to everything, even down to the smallest level, then whether whether your behavior is truly free or not is, I guess it could be an illusion. It really doesn't exist. Although you say to yourself, I make decisions. You chose to take this class, right? Well, I can make a pretty strong argument. I think I did last time that I don't think so. I don't think you chose this class. I mean, yeah, you made an indication on some form that you were going to take this, and you paid some money, but I don't know if that was a decision made based on free will or not. You're here because you need some credits to get this piece of paper called a degree, which will get you a job, which will get you more pieces of paper, then will get you food, water, air, sex. That's it. Well, the air is free right now, but food, water, sex, and well, anyway, so those are really things that drive us, very basic needs and motives that we have. And that's why you're here. Oh, I'm here for the quest for knowledge. Really? I think I told you this last time. If you think that's why you're here, let me know. I'll set things up so you don't get any credit for this class. If you didn't get credit for this class, or I could go the other way. I could say, I'll just give you an A. I'll give you an A. Never have to come back another class period. How many more class periods do you think you'd attend? It might make a difference on how you view me, though. If I give you an A, so you never have to come back again, you're going to say, what a great guy, but you won't come back. Then if I say, I'm not going to give you credit, you won't come back, but you'll say, that guy's an idiot. So I could affect your opinion of me, but chase you away if that's what I wanted to do. So I don't think this was just some willy-nilly decision that you made. And you also happen to be here at this moment in time, in this location, and in this particular environment that you live in, and that's why you're here. That's why you're not in Tokyo right now, or why you're not in Los Angeles taking some class at UC, in the UC system or something over there. It's because you're here and you're now, and this is it, and this is your lot in life. Why don't you just take off? Why don't you just take off and go to LA and go out there with all the beautiful people? Why don't you do that? Habits. Yeah, you've got a whole bunch of habits. You've been pushed and pulled, and and here you are, and you're here. That's it. Why don't I just take off and go out there? Oh, because my environment dictates this. You know. Well, you have free will. If you have free will, you could just do it. No, I don't think so. I don't think, well, because I think things are over here. That our behavior is caused by events. Now, the good news is we can figure out why people behave the way they do. And if they're not behaving properly, we can figure out how to change the environment, change their experiences to help fix them, providing genes don't get in the way, providing their genetic heritage doesn't get in the way, providing their biology doesn't get in the way. But behavior is always a complex interaction of genes, which is part and parcel of biology, and the environment. There ain't nothing else. Well, unless, of course, you believe that you have free will. And I'll tell you the difficulty here is that you say, well, okay, that makes perfect sense. So science is over here. It's looking for causes for events out there in the world. And then therefore we can figure out why people behave the way they will, the way they do. But you remember I said, what's the downside of determinism? You could get depressed because it's like, oh, there's no freedom. I have no choice. It's just things are the way they are. Yes. So you mean I don't have any choice? You mean to tell me that my grade I'm going to get in this class has been determined from the beginning of time? Possibly. If that's what you think, if that's what you believe, probably so. You get an A in here? I'd say good for you, except you had nothing to do with it. You're just a cog in the machine of the cosmos. You get an F? No fault of yours. You know, you were bound to get it. I mean, you could make that argument. Although if you get an A, you will be a free willist because you'll be going around patting yourself on the back for a great job, well done, except you really had nothing to do with it. But if you get an F, you could say, whoever is important to you in your life, you know, I failed that class. You can always go say, well, it's not my fault. I'm a victim. I'm just a cog in the machinery of the cosmos. Can't argue with that. Anyway, determinism, science is over here. Religion and our justice system is over here. The whole concept of punishing people. We talked about all this, didn't we? Yeah, go through it quick. Yeah, so you remember, our justice system, religion's over here. Science is over here. Can't we just fit the two together? My guess is most of you have grown up in some sort of traditional Judeo-Christian religion, would be my guess. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on like whether you believe in God or whether you have a soul or not. My guess is probably most of you do. And most of you have some, now that I've mentioned this, you're saying, well, that's all fine and well, and science is a good thing, but, you know, it has nothing to do with God. You know, it's like, well, it's difficult to have a science of fixed relations if you've got an entity that is doing things out there. And I think I told you that maybe one way that might help you to deal with this is that you might say to yourself, well, you know what, I think religion maybe gives us a handle on, you know, what this is all about. Maybe it gives your some meaning to your life that's more than just taking classes and, you know, getting cheese on your hamburger. But science tells us how things fit together and how they work. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not totally exclusive topics. If you figure out that the cosmos and everything in it is completely fixed going back to the Big Bang and even before that, then maybe you want to say, oh, well, that's God. Okay, whatever version you like. Somebody had their hand up.
Yeah, Sam Harris is like a really good philosopher.
What's that?
He's a really good philosopher when it comes to that.
Who's
He
that?
talks about Sam Harris. He talks about morality within religion and like.
So C.S. Lewis. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of good philosophers that deal with all of these notions. You know, William James, right? A determinist until he got so depressed he decided to believe in free will, and he said his first act of free will was to believe in it. Yeah, there are a lot of philosophers that have a lot of interesting ideas out there. I think the most important thing, in my opinion, is what works for you and leads to a satisfying and enjoyable life, in my opinion. You know, Well, yeah, but what if ultimately there is no God, there's nothing like that, you know, it was all just fairy tales that we were told. Okay. I don't know. I don't have any answers for you. You know, maybe you don't want any answers from me, but I'm just saying if you're looking for answers from me, you aren't going to find them. These are tensions. These are tensions. They exist, okay? And you may just be a strict determinist. You may be a strict free willist. I don't know. It's a decision you make for yourself personally, you know? I'm pretty convinced, though, that science tells us how things work. And now, exactly how it ultimately all fits together in the greater scheme of things, I don't have all the answers. I'll leave that up to you. I guess a question I would have for you is, are you happy? Are you satisfied with your life, and are you a happy individual? I think that's a pretty important goal, you know. Sometimes we always talk about these student learning outcomes. Well, did the students learn this, and did they learn that, and, you know, and it's like, you know, my question is, did you get out of here? Did you get a job? Are you a happy individual? Are you satisfied with your life? If you are, then I'd say, good for you. Success. We've succeeded. I was actually thinking about teaching a class. I don't know if I will, if I'm going to teach enough years yet to do this, but I think I thought it would be interesting to have a course in happiness and success. I think it would be packed, but probably with unhappy and unsuccessful people. Well, if you're happy and successful, you want to take my class, you don't need it, you know. They'd probably be filled with a whole room full of people that are like discontented and depressed, you know. And then I could take it on the road, you know, and make tons of money or something. But I think that it wouldn't be bad to have a course like that integrated in with academics because I think maybe we overlook some of those things sometimes. Anyway, the mind-body problem. You remember that? Do you have a mind? Do you have a body? Are they one and the same? Are they separate? And these issues are discussed in the first part of Chapter 3. Did we go through Chapter 3? No, probably not. All right, well, the mind-body problem. Do you have a mind? Do you have a body? That's the problem. And are they one and the same, or are they two separate things? That's the issue. This argument goes way back. Idealism is a philosophy that says that all that counts is your mind. Did we talk about this already? All right. Idealism is a philosophy that says that all there is your mental experience, your consciousness. That's it. If that's not here, there's nothing. That's it. You know? So that if you're not here to experience something, then there is nothing. Personally, I think this thing, whatever this thing is, this reality thing, I think that this is going to continue whether I'm here to see it or not. I think so. I'm not 100% sure about that. I mean, maybe when I die, it's just like this is some kind of dream that I've created in my head, you know. Except I think there's something to this. Things seem pretty vivid, you know, and if I take a hammer and hit my hand, that really hurts, and I think that's a real thing. That has a lot of meaning for me. But idealists would say that the only thing that counts is your psychological experience, what's in your mind, you know, that's it. Materialists would maintain that you have a body, that's it. There's no consciousness, there's nothing like that. You know, it's just your body. John Watson, who we're going to talk about later on, who started the school of thought known as behaviorism, denied consciousness altogether. He said there's no little person in your head talking to you, although maybe you think there is. I mean, we do seem like we have verbal experiences in our head, you know. Sometimes those things even get expressed outwardly by me. I think I told you, there are times when I find myself walking around, I'm not even aware that I'm doing it. But my daughter one time said to me, she said, "You're doing it again." I said, "What's that?" She says, "You're talking to yourself." I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, I talk to myself all the time. Sometimes it comes out, sometimes it doesn't." And but generally speaking, if I'm working at home, yeah, I may be walking around, blah, 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 you know. And sometimes I'll just sit there and it'll be like almost subvocal, but then that's how a lot of us learn to read too. It's like, you know, the cat ran around the house. Then it becomes, and then your tongue is doing little subvocal stuff, you know. So you're not, but I've sort of regressed back to just talking out loud. hearing myself think, I guess. But anyway, materials would maintain that all you have is a body, and there's this group of British empiricists. They're called British empiricists, British philosophers is what I meant to say. They're in the first part of chapter 3 in your textbook, maybe the middle of chapter 3. You don't need to know every detail, okay, in chapter 3 of the British empiricists, but you need to know that they have one thing in common, that they believe that at some point you get information through your senses. That's why they're called British empiricists. They're British philosophers, and they believe that you get information through your senses. Now, there's lots of variations on the theme in there. John Locke, Thomas Hobbes, Berkeley, Hume. Now, they all had their own little versions of things, and they sort of anticipated some future ideas in psychology. I don't expect you to memorize all the details of each one of those philosophers, but just generally know who the British empiricists were. René Descartes, beginning of chapter 3, French philosopher, he was an interactive dualist. We didn't talk about him already? I can't remember back 2 weeks ago. I have trouble remembering what I had for lunch yesterday. But René Descartes was an interactive dualist. He believed you have a mind and you have a body, and the two of them interact. That's why he's called an interactive dualist. If you believe you're an idealist or you're a materialist only, you're a monist. Philosophical monist. If you think the two things exist and they interact, you're an interactive dualist. If you think both these things exist, you just be a dualist. But anyhow, he believed that you have contact with God through your pineal gland. In fact, that's where your soul is located. And God can communicate through your soul/mind. He felt like that was your mind, was in your pineal gland, your mind/soul. And that's how God communicates with you. But that your body is subject to natural law. So then that sort of anticipated this idea of reflexes in human behavior. And but the two things interact. There's lots of variations on this theme. If you Google mind-body problem and start looking at it, you'll see all kinds of, there's occasionalism, there's epiphenomenalism, there's lots of idealism, materialism, lots of different sort of variations on a theme. But for our purposes, this is important, the mind, and I'll tell you why, that concept. Because it generally refers to things that are going on inside your head that we can't see directly. You know, I don't know what's going on inside your head, if anything at all. But so then the question becomes, is the mind a useful construct? Is it a useful hypothetical construct? You know, it doesn't have any tangible existence. That's why it's hypothetical. And it's a term that collectively refers to things that you do inside your head. And the reason this is important for us is because there's some theories toward the end of this textbook on cognitive learning theories. Cognitive psychology has to do with how we process information in our heads, how we get it in, what we do with it, how we get it back out. That's cognitive psychology. And so if you don't think you have a mind or this doesn't make any sense to you, then you can skip the last third of this course because it's on cognitive learning theories. 15 years ago, intro psych texts, they wouldn't even have that word in a definition of psychology. Now we're more comfortable with psychology as a science. So it's still not like chemistry, all right, or physics, but it's, you know, we use the same methods. And but now you see that word mind appears in the definition of psychology in most intro psych books. It'll be, you know, psychology is the scientific study of the behavior of the individual. That's what you'd have seen 15 years ago. Now you see psychology is the scientific study of the behavior and mental processes, or the mind of the individual. You'll see that now. So I think most psychologists think of the mind as having to do with consciousness and awareness, and that it's a useful concept to refer to the things that collectively we do in our head and this awareness that we have of the world. And so, so we're more comfortable with it now, and most psychologists, I believe, would say the mind is an emergent property of the brain. You got to have a human brain to have a human mind. Well, you got to have a human brain to do the kinds of things that human brains do. Take information in, categorize it, process it, organize it, and then get the information back out when you need it. Remember it. I'm talking about memory now. But you got to have a human brain to have that. I'm pretty sure your dog, when you look at your dog, I'm pretty sure that it is not having the same thoughts you're having. Well, how do I know? Because I look at its behavior. We just recently got a dog. Just one more animal for me, the zookeeper, to take care of. But it's okay. It's a very good, nice dog. As dogs go, I really didn't want a dog, but my wife and my daughter went out and got this dog. And but at the Humane Society. But this dog is really nice, I have to say. It doesn't have any accidents. It doesn't really yelp or anything like that. It just sits there and then wants to love you. So it's okay. But when I look at this dog, it doesn't behave like a person. It smells things a lot. And when it eats, it gulps things down really fast. And it hasn't had any conversations with me yet. So it hasn't talked to me. There's a biggie right there. Anyway, my point is we do know some things about dog minds. They're just not human minds. We also have an African gray parrot. They're supposed to be like, if you read books, just, off-the-shelf trade books, they talk about African gray parrots as having intelligence equivalent to like a 5-year-old child or something, human. And I don't know that I wouldn't go that far, but they are very intelligent birds, I will say that. Well, how do we know? Because they solve a lot of problems for themselves. They do things that are pretty interesting. I'll give you an example. We get this, in addition to speaking, the very first thing I taught this bird to say was, "Good morning, Your Highness." I figured if we've got to have, and it does, every morning it sees me, it says, "Good morning, Your Highness, good morning, Your Highness." But here's the thing, it could be 10 o'clock at night. "Good morning, Your Highness, good morning, Your Highness." And so it doesn't understand what morning is. I think it just, my name is "Good morning, Your Highness." That's the label for me. And it does have labels, because we have a cat named Shelly. And when that cat comes around, like they'll let it outside, it goes, "Shelly, Shelly." And it does it either in my voice or my wife's voice, which is really weird. I mean, African gray parrots, they can imitate things down like unbelievable. I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting there and I hear it says, "Mark, Mark." And I think my wife just walked in the house. And I'm, yes, and I get up and no, it's the bird. My mother was over visiting once, and she was in this day room kind of thing, cleaning windows. And she said, I came home and she said, "Boy, it was the weirdest thing. I was cleaning the windows and the bird was behind me in its cage, And she said, all of a sudden I heard this voice and it said, 'I need help. I need help.'" Just be dry. And I'd never heard the bird say that before. He was saying to her, "I need help, like, help me, please. I've been kept captive in this cage, So this bird strikes me as being really good at imitating things. But what's going on in here? I don't know. I can just only make some inferences. I will tell you one other thing, though. This bird, speaking to its level of, if this is what you want to call intelligence, because after all, when you think about it, if you take a human IQ test, what's involved there? Solving puzzles, solving a series of puzzles. And if you solve more puzzles than somebody else, we say, you're more intelligent than they are. It's just that simple. Well, this bird solves puzzles. So we had the bird in there, and it's one of these big cages with a little metal circle thing that flips down in front of a door, so you can't open the door. But if you take that little metal circle and hold it up like that, the little door swings open so you can put food and water. But it takes a human, you got to have one hand to hold the little flippy thing up and one hand to pull the door open. It takes two hands, right? This bird, one day, I came in there and it was sitting on top of its cage, and everything was shut up, locked up and all that. And I thought, how in the world did this? I asked my wife, "Do you let the bird out?" She goes, "No." So I took the bird, put it back in the cage, and I sat there and just watched. I wanted to see what this bird did. This bird had figured out from the inside of the cage now, not the outside, which is where this little flippy thing is. Inside the cage. What the bird did was took one claw and grabbed onto the little bars of the cage, and on the inside there's a little slit between the bars, you know. It took its other foot with one claw and put it through there, it flipped up the little round thing, took its paw and went, psst, and it all at the same time, same movement, flipped it up and kicked the door open with one foot. Just flip, pump, and that thing just slid open, and then he got out. I mean, I'm not sure I could do that. Let go, you know, the bird did that. So then I had to like put wire on all of these doors, and then it would sit there and start untwisting the wire, and then flip and out, you know. So anyway, my point is that I don't think it has a human mind, because its conversation is a little weird, but it does some pretty amazing things in terms of solving puzzles. So, you know, anyhow. Which makes me even feel bad that the thing is inside a cage, because I'm just like, oh my God, I have a sentient organism inside this cage. It's like it knows its plight. You know, you will live and die inside this little 20 square feet, you know. And now I do think about things like that. You know, that bird, you know those birds, you know how long they live on average? An African gray parrot? 80 years. That bird will be dancing on my grave, you know. And I wonder about who's going to take care of this animal, you know. I mean, the thing's only 10 years old. I mean, it's got 70 years to go in 20 square feet. I'm opposed to keeping birds like that. I'm just sorry, but it's just, you know, in your family, you know, it's the environment. It's your lot in life, you know. So anyway, the mind-body problem, we have to think that there's a mind because it's important for cognitive learning theories. And then we got the nature and the origin of knowledge with epistemology. And what does that have to do with? Well, this is learning. You know, learning, it seems like that might have a little something to do with knowledge. There's a couple of different versions of this, and I'm going to, epistemological points of view, I'm going to write them down over here. One of them is empiricism. Another one's rationalism. This is the first part of chapter 3. Empiricism maintains that the prime source of knowledge is sensory experience. And rationalism maintains the prime source of knowledge is reasoning and thinking. Okay, so one way that you might come into knowledge is by gathering information through your senses, which then raises an important question, which is, are you born with any knowledge? You think you're born with any knowledge? Did we have this discussion already? Huh? Because I teach a couple classes, and they all have to do with this, so sometimes they overlap a little bit. Okay, are we born with knowledge? When a baby's born, right there, he's delivered. Boom. Is that baby born with knowledge? What do you think?
What do you define knowledge?
Well, that's a good question. I guess you'd have to define knowledge before you could even begin to answer that question. So, I don't know. You tell me. I mean, how do you want to define it? What do you think? Do they know anything? In the sense that maybe you know something? Yeah, I don't either.
Well, no, because even then they have to learn that.
Okay, those are all those words you just said are all part of this discussion. You said instinctual stuff. All right, let's write those terms down. So we got instinct going on over here. And what did you say?
But they have to learn the, like, kind of instinct, but they still have to learn, like, okay. I feel like they're still learning.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think they learn anything before they're born? As a matter of fact, they can respond to the world even when they're in the womb. And so anyway, they can learn some things, really basic things.
Like sucking their thumb.
Well, they're doing that, those sort of reflexively. But by the way, let's throw that word out there, reflex. And that they can learn, like to distinguish between their mother and someone else, the smell of their mother and someone else, their mother's milk versus somebody else's milk. They can respond to sounds and things that are out here in the world, but I don't think I would want to say that, well, that's knowledge in the same way that we think about it. I mean, if it is very, very basic kind of association kind of thing. And they do have reflexes. And they have reflexes when they're born. Their newborns, neonates, have a lot of reflexes. Can you name a reflex?
Cry.
Yeah, crying, anything else? Startle reflex.
Vomiting.
The what?
Spitting up. Vomiting.
I suppose that's a reflex, sure. I guess if you get, we have that. I mean, you eat something that's not right, I mean, your body's going to be trying to expel it. Sucking reflex, that's one. There's the Moro reflex, which is the startle reflex, where they instinctively, well, I'm mixing my terms, reflexively go like that. And they can walk, they can hold their breath. Oh, that'll freak you out if you ever have any kids and you go to the Gus and Goldie thing, which when they're like a year old or something, go to Gus and Goldie, learn to swim and all that. And then you take your little child, and then the lifeguard or the instructor sitting there in a pool in the deep end, and you're sitting there with your little baby, and they say, okay, put the baby in the water, and you're just like, are you out of your mind? This is the deep end, No, it's okay. That was one of the hardest things for me to do, is to take my daughter and just kind of toss her into the water in the deep end. And then she went down, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm taking my shoes off, I'm going to have to dive in and get her. But then she just bobbed up to the top. She held her breath, so there's those kind of basic reflexes in there, and everything was okay. But that's a leap of faith, I'll tell you right now. And everything was okay. So there are a lot of different reflexes. You got the eye blink reflexes, you have the salivary reflex. You still have those. But the sucking reflex, that goes away, and some others, the Babinski reflex, you stroke a neonate on their feet, they go like that. I don't know what the adaptive significance of that is, but anyway, they do it. So we have a lot of reflexes when we're born, and that's a good thing until the nervous system starts to become a little bit more organized, and where there's more connections made, because that just keeps you alive, And now instinct. Do we have any instincts?
Yeah.
Who said yeah? Name one.
Like we're hungry, like the babies are hungry.
I don't think that's instinct. I think there are a lot of different processes involved in eating. For example, eating is a very complex process, by the way. And I don't think we want to use the word instinct to describe all of the processes that are involved in eating. Lots of things. Hormonal changes, blood glucose level changes. There's hunger pangs, your stomach, you have contractions, there's leptin, there's all of these different biochemicals going on. And eating is a very complex process. It involves the hypothalamus in your brain. It involves the thyroid gland. I mean, there's a lot of things,
What about crying?
What's that?
Crying. They cry from the time
Yeah, hopefully if they're healthy, they'll come out crying and active. But I don't know. I would say that I don't know. I'm not an expert on crying, but it seems to me like that would probably be a good a good sort of a reflex to have, to make sure that the